It was Christmas Eve, and the sound of roaring engines faded into silence across the small, snow-covered town of Redwood Valley. The old bar on the edge of Highway 9, with its flickering neon sign reading Writer's Haven, sat in eerie stillness. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and memory. Around a long wooden table sat 6 men, once feared across states, now forgotten by most. They called themselves the Iron Hounds, former members of the infamous Hells Angels, their leather jackets still stitched with worn insignias that had seen both blood and brotherhood. They had no family left, no one waiting at home. Every Christmas, they gathered in that same bar, not to celebrate, but to remember. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals under the gray daylight, coating the empty road in silence. The leader, Jack Bear Monroe, a man in his late 50s with a grizzled beard and a deep scar across his cheek, stared at the flames in the fireplace. His eyes reflected a mix of regret and exhaustion, the kind that years of loss carve into a man's soul. Around him sat Tex, Bones, Rico, Mac, and Shorty, each carrying ghosts of their own. They drank, joked half-heartedly, and filled the room with the noise of men who feared quiet more than death. But this Christmas felt heavier. The world outside had moved on without them, and then came a knock. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and miracles that show up when least expected, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, where every story reminds us that compassion still exists in this world. Jack froze mid-pour. The knock came again, soft, hesitant, but firm enough to cut through the air. Nobody ever came there. Not on Christmas. Not ever. Tex frowned and reached for the door, muttering something about crazy townsfolk. But when the door swung open, what stood before them was in trouble. It was Hope. A young woman, maybe in her late 20s, stood holding a little girl no older than 6. Her cheeks were red from the cold, her long brown hair dusted with snowflakes. She wore a worn-out green coat that had seen better winters, and her daughter clutched a stuffed rabbit to her chest. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke. "I'm sorry to bother you, our car broke down just up the road. We've been walking for miles. Could we just warm up a bit?" For a moment, no one moved. These men, who had faced shootouts, arrests, and betrayals, now stared speechless at a mother and child shivering in the doorway. Jack was the first to rise. "Come in," he said, his voice gruff but softening. "Get by the fire before you both freeze." The woman hesitated, eyes darting between their leather jackets and tattooed hands, but something in Jack's tone felt safe. She stepped inside, guiding her daughter closer to the warmth. The little girl, her nose red and her curls damp, looked around the room in awe. "Mommy," she whispered, "they look like superheroes." The men chuckled quietly. Bones wiped his nose, pretending it was from the cold. The woman introduced herself as Hannah, and her daughter was Sophie. They had been driving to her sister's house in another town for Christmas dinner when their old sedan gave out. "I don't have anyone else to call," Hannah admitted, her eyes flickering with embarrassment. "My phone died. I just didn't know where else to go." Jack nodded. "You did right coming here." He poured her a mug of coffee and handed Sophie a cup of hot chocolate they found in the back. The sight of the child sipping from a chipped mug by the fire did something strange to the room. It softened it. It filled the silence with a warmth none of them had felt in years. Hours passed. The men fixed up some food, whatever they had: eggs, beans, toast, and a slice of pie Tex had picked up days ago. Sophie ate with delight, thanking each of them by name as her mother watched, eyes misty. Jack sat quietly beside her. "You traveling far?" he asked. She nodded. "A couple of hours out. My sister lives in Carson Ridge. I just wanted Sophie to have a real Christmas this year." Her voice cracked slightly. "The last few have been hard." Jack didn't pry. He didn't have to. Her words carried the weight of someone who had been fighting too long, for too little. The snow outside thickened, the road long since vanished under white. When Rico checked the weather radio, he frowned. "Storm's gettin' worse. No one's driving anywhere till morning." Hannah sighed, but Jack spoke calmly. "You'll stay here tonight. Safe and warm." She started to protest, but his look told her it wasn't up for debate. That night, the old bar transformed. Mac found an old Christmas tree in the storage room, half broken but still standing. Sophie helped them decorate it with bottle caps and pieces of colored paper. She laughed, and for the first time in years, laughter echoed in that place, not out of mockery, but joy. Hannah sang quietly as they worked, her voice soft and pure. Even the roughest among them paused to listen. Bear, the man whose name once made men flinch, felt something loosen in his chest. He remembered his own daughter, long gone, whose laughter had once sounded like Sophie's. As night deepened, the fire glowed bright. Sophie fell asleep curled up on Jack's old leather jacket, the rabbit in her arms. The men sat in silence, watching her. Mac whispered, "Never thought I'd see the day a kid would sleep through our noise." Bones smiled faintly. "Maybe we ain't as bad as we thought." Jack looked at Hannah. "You've got a brave little girl." Hannah smiled sadly. "She's stronger than she knows. Her dad passed when she was 2. Been just us ever since." Jack's eyes darkened. "I'm sorry." She nodded. "I used to think we'd never have a real Christmas again. But, this feels more like one than I ever expected." For a long time, no one spoke. Outside, the snow eased into quiet flakes, as if the storm itself had decided to rest. When morning came, the sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the bar in gold and white. Tex and Rico were already outside, digging Hannah's car out of the snow. Mac had fixed the engine. Turns out, a few old bikers knew more about cars than most mechanics. Hannah stood beside them, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." Jack simply shrugged. "You already did." Sophie ran up and hugged his leg. "Thank you, Mr. Bear," she said, her voice bright. Jack froze for a second. No one had called him that since his daughter. Slowly, he bent down and hugged her back. "You take care of your mom, okay, kiddo?" She nodded with all the seriousness a 6-year-old could manage. As they loaded up their car, Hannah turned back one last time. "You know," she said, "you could join us for Christmas dinner. My sister would love to have you." The men exchanged awkward glances, unsure how to respond. It had been years since any of them had been invited anywhere. Jack chuckled softly. "Maybe next time." Hannah smiled. "Promise?" He hesitated. Then nodded. "Promise." They watched as the car drove off down the snowy road, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. The bar felt emptier now, but also lighter. Jack looked around at his brothers. "Guess we ain't completely forgotten after all." Tex grinned. "Guess not." That afternoon, as they cleaned up the remains of their unlikely Christmas, Jack found something on the counter. A small drawing, crayon on napkin. It showed 6 bikers standing under a Christmas tree with a little girl in the middle, holding hands. Above it, in childish handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for giving me Christmas." Jack stood there for a long time, staring at it. Then he pinned it above the bar. None of the men said a word, but one by one, they took off their jackets and hung them on the wall, a quiet symbol that maybe, just maybe, the road didn't have to end in loneliness. The next year, when Christmas came again, there was no question. The Iron Hounds had a tree already up, real ornaments this time. Plates were set for guests. And when a car pulled up outside, Hannah and Sophie stepping out with gifts and smiles, Jack's heart felt whole for the first time in decades. Sometimes, miracles don't come with bright lights or choirs. Sometimes, they come with a knock on a cold night, from a mother and her little girl who remind you that even the roughest hearts can still find warmth again.